Hi, and welcome to Three Questions with. Got my buddy Steve and Caleb with us. And today we're going to talk a little bit about fraud prevention. Good morning, guys. How you doing?
Doing amazing.
All right, Steve, jump in. Tell us a little bit about what happened.
Well, I got some information that someone was posing as me through email. And I noticed that our M and the letters, there was an N and an R that looked like an M. So I think what I wanted to get the word out is that this is a good way of people doing fraud through email. And all of a sudden, I ended up calling Kaleb.
So basically someone was trying to get someone to give them a payment instead of you, right?
Yep, that's what it ended up coming down to. Somebody had bought the domain name, and Caleb's got the way out of it. Go ahead, Kaleb.
Yeah, jump in, Caleb.
Yeah, so when I got involved, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, tell us what happened.
Yeah, when I got involved, Steve, he had already noticed that the domain name was different, right? So if you type the word R and N and you type an M next to that, that actually looks, your eyes won't notice that very quickly. So what happened was, he had a customer that he did a job for, an HVAC job, and it was over 30 grand. And he sent an invoice to that person, and then someone inserted themselves in that conversation. So you could see the email chain where it was really Steve, and then it wasn't. That person ended up convincing him to do an ACH instead of sending a check. Well, by then, Steve, she already sent a check to Steve in the mail, but he said, well, why don't we cancel that? I really need to have an ACH instead. So one of the key things here is they know each other. They're not just, they're pretty familiar with each other. And I'm reading through the email, and it's good English. It sounds like Steve. When I read it, it's got the smiley face in the right place. It's got, they did a good job. 5 years ago, you wouldn't have seen the good English and good grammar, but now I really did see how that shone through and how that wasn't really flagged. So, but think of it, someone actually bought a domain name that, they went to that much trouble to try to scam somebody. So the end result is that means the hacker was probably in there for weeks or months. And what they do now, that used to be they would hack into your mailbox and send out a bunch of email, right, spam. But now they watch you for that right opportunity. And that was a good opportunity where they intercepted that and they received over $30,000. So there's a lot that goes with that, right? We ended up, that was reported to law enforcement. That is something that everyone should do. I checked to make sure that Steve had multi-factor authentication turned on his email account, because that makes it infinitely harder to hack. A password is one thing, but a password plus, a code on your phone to get into your email is infinitely protects it. The customer did not have that. That's why, more than likely, why they were hacked and why they were sitting on that mailbox. Another thing that people overlook once there's a hack like that and it kind of blows over and you kind of forget about everything is that domain is still out there. They can still use that domain again and deceive somebody else, like another one of Steve's customers. So, I ended up going to the registrar, namecheap.com, filed a complaint there, and it took a while, but they wanted, evidence that this really was a hack. So there's something called a header in an email. And it's this gobbledygook, this stuff you don't want to hear me talk about, but it's a postmark of everywhere the email came from. So you can see the IP addresses it came from, the originations and all that. And I actually was able to identify a very well-known worldwide nonprofit organization based on the East Coast somewhere, that it looks like they may have used that email server to send that mail out. So that was another one that was involved in that hack as well. And that's still under investigation, so I can't talk about that part of it. But the point is, you can't just forget about these kind of things. You really have to go the extra mile to make sure that doesn't happen.
So Caleb, give us some more advice on how we can protect ourselves. I know you mentioned the dual authentication. Is there anything else that could help us not fall victim to this? Because this is pretty elaborate.
Yeah, so you say elaborate, but honestly, it's so common. It's very common right now. So when I heard from Steve about it, it was like, all right, well, here's another one. I hate to say it, but it's kind of routine. And it's comparatively, it's actually a lower dollar amount than I usually see. So I've seen millions. But what can you do? Well, pick up the phone. If you know your customer, pick up the phone. If Steve is okay with getting a check, but all of a sudden he was kind of pushy about this ACH. But I looked at it, and he wasn't that pushy. You know what I mean? So it's like, I can understand why they didn't pick up the phone, because it's like, yeah, this has to be Steve, but I don't know why he's really asking for an ACH today. But it was, that's a tough one to get around. The other one is really looking at the email. So you see a name. I can say I'm Bill Gates. I can send you an email that says I'm Bill Gates at Microsoft.com.
Yep.
But you have to really look at the email address. Is that a Gmail address? Is that domain exactly right that I expect? It doesn't hurt to do a search on previous emails that were legitimate and compare that with the person you're talking to now. I've definitely seen customers that reply back saying, "Is this really you?" And the hacker replies back, "Yes, it is." Of course they would, right? So I've seen those conversations go back and forth. Multi-factor authentication by far is what's going to do that. Changing your password, using strong, secure passwords. The last thing you want to do is if your password was summer 2001, 2022, whatever, don't make it an extra digit next time. If the hacker knows that password, they're going to try every variation of it. Their bots are going to try that in seconds. They'll try thousands of different things with that variation. So changing it to a completely different password is advisable. And like I said, pick up the phone. Talk to the customer. Talk to who you're dealing with.
So, guys, if anyone has questions about this, what's the best way to reach out to you? Steve, how should they get in touch with you if they have questions about this?
I mean, our site is, we get an email triggered to me from our site on paradigmph.com. So anyone has access to me.
So Kaleb, if someone wants to learn more about this, how should they reach out to you? If they're like, hey, I think this might be happening to me.
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. It's Kaleb Jacobs, spelled with a K, eaglemsp.com. So it's eagle, marysampaul.com. That's where you can find me. And I'm in our Scarborough office right now, but we're based in Bedford, New Hampshire too.
Great. I appreciate you both taking a few minutes to come on the show and to warn people about this, because it's like you said, Kaleb, I didn't realize how, common this is getting and stuff. And unfortunately, maybe only a matter of time before someone watching is next. So appreciate the share of the information. Have a great day, guys.
Okay, you too, Kevin. Take care, Kaleb.